The last game that we are talking about here is Monday Night Football. It's the Baltimore Ravens and the Detroit Lions. This one is in Baltimore. What do we think about this one, Dalton? Where are we starting?
So much talk about the Lions' offensive line, and especially the interior that's been reshuffled. You've got the two young kids, and you've got Glasgow playing center now. And look, they did run the ball better against Chicago last week than they did the previous week against Green Bay. One thing I'm looking for, though, is I think the Lions are much better because they have Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker at tackle. They're much better right now running off the edges than they are between the tackles. And I think between the tackles, especially when you got Roquan Smith sniffing around in there at linebacker, that's going to be a big story for the Lions. Can they run between the tackles? Outside of one long run from Jahmyr Gibbs against the Bears, there's really been not much to speak of. Between the tackles this year, 62.6 rushing grade, not great. 50.6 run blocking grade. Only one explosive run. Trev, if they didn't have that one, I believe it's a 40 or 42-yard carry by Jahmyr Gibbs, they would be last in the NFL in yards per carry between the tackles. That's really the only play they've gotten out of this. So right now, when you look at this team, they can run to the edges because they have Sewell and Decker, but they're having difficulties, and it's expected with the reshuffling of this interior. They are having trouble running between the tackles. And with Frank Ragnow and Kevin Zeitler, right, obviously in there before last year, this used to be something they were really good at. They could run anywhere they wanted to. Right now they can hit the edges. It's not too bad out there, but running between the tackles is going to be at a premium for this team, especially against Roquan Smith, who's been so good in run defense the first couple weeks of the season.
On the Ravens side of things, I think that anybody who is a Derrick Henry fantasy owner knows what I'm about to say
Thank
here.
you, Trevor.
And
appreciate
probably
that.
What'd you say?
Appreciate that. I'm one of those. Yeah.
Look, I have him in 3 leagues. Okay, so it's not. I'm not saying anything to you that I haven't said to myself in the mirror this week about how this went. 2.1 yards per attempt average this past week. -1 yards before contact against Cleveland. 52.1 run blocking grade. That's just not the stuff that you see from the Baltimore Ravens. And kudos to the Cleveland Browns. They were fantastic at defending the run, whether it was their defensive line, their interior defensive linemen, the edge rushers, the linebackers, and even the secondary players that I was impressed with. They didn't have a single defensive player who had a run defense grade below 68, which is really impressive when the whole team is able to rally and defend the run like that. For the Ravens, though, I'm worried about Daniel Falele at the guard spot, about Andrew Voorhees at the guard spot, and even Tyler Linderbaum struggled last week, specifically against Malik Collins and what he was able to do against him. Now, the good news is, for all of us Derrick Henry fantasy owners, it should be a bounce-back week. When you look at just the interior defensive line for the Detroit Lions, just those defensive tackles, a 49.9 run defense grade so far this season from them. That's 26th in the NFL. And so it should be closer to business as usual for the Ravens, especially with this game being in Baltimore. And so I think that they're going to be able to control the ball much more closely to the way that they did so against the Buffalo Bills rather than what we saw last week versus the Cleveland Browns. I think the Ravens win this game, although I do think that it's close because I think that the Detroit Lions are getting back into their groove about how they run their passing attack. I'm going to say Ravens 30, Detroit Lions 28, so a very close one here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the Lions did well to attack the middle of the field against the Bears last week, but this is a whole different animal when you're talking about Roquan at linebacker, Kyle Hamilton and Malachi Starks back there at safety. I don't think it's going to be quite as easy. I have the Ravens 28-20. I do think they get the run game going again. You mentioned they've got DJ Reader, Tyleik Williams, Roy Lopez in there on the inside, kind of struggling through 2 weeks in run defense, and those are guys that you really expect to defend better than they have so far for you. All three of those guys under a 60 run defense grade. I like the Ravens at home. I think, last week they didn't play their best offensive game despite what the score was. I think they bounce back. I think Derrick Henry bounces back, and Lamar Jackson is Lamar Jackson as always in prime time.